Welcome to another episode of Living the Dream. Today, we are blessed in having as a guest on our show, Miss Julie Busby.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Now, tell us about yourself.
Well, I wrote a book. It's called Running with Tears, Turning Your Pain into Passion. So this is the book here. But I had a life-changing experience back in 2009. And out of that, there was a lot of betrayals and just really a lot of pain. And so what I realized in my journey was that oftentimes people can end up in some very dark places that they never had any intention on going. And so out of this experience, I ended up starting a nonprofit, which is called Malachi. And it's based off of the scripture Malachi 4:6, which says that God would return the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the fathers, or else a curse will come upon the land. And so the vision of Malachi is raising up leaders of a nation from unlikely places, prison. So I've been doing that for the last 4 years down at Lebanon Correctional Institution, teaching them leadership skills, how to be fathers. But I just realized that a lot of these men that are in prison, they've had things that have happened to them. And what I tell them is oftentimes things happen to us in life that we have no choice about. So people betray us. Children get abused. Fathers walk out, they abandon them. Mothers get addicted to drugs. These things happen to us that wound us. And so out of that woundedness, if we don't heal from that, you hear the saying, hurting people hurt people, which is true. And so what happens is things happen to us that we have no choice, but then we turn around and we hurt people. And so at that point, we have a choice about what we're doing, but we have to realize these things happen to us, go to the root of it, find healing, and then find purpose out of that pain. And so that's what the book is really about, but it's, turning your pain into passion. And so that's what I did. I took, one of the most painful experiences in my life and said, okay, how can I turn this around and use this as a platform to become a platform to my purpose and my greatest passion. And so that's what I'm passionate about is teaching these men that you can take the worst thing that's happened in your life and God can redeem you and restore you.
Okay. Wow. As I was reading as far as your captions, as far as the forward in your book, I was saying, wow, you went through quite a lot. As far as publishing your book, what were some of the speed bumps? Did you experience any
Well, I
speed bumps?
self-published. I went through Create Space. So anybody who is looking to self-publish, I would recommend them. It was, the process was easy. They have a template that will show you how to format your book. But the main thing is, what I tell people is writing the book is half of it. Promoting it is the other half. So, people say, oh, you wrote a book. Okay, well, that's great. But if nobody knows about it, you can have the best technology or invention in the world, but if nobody knows about it. So people have a tendency to think, oh, I wrote a book and now I'm done and it's just going to sell itself. That's not true. And, I'm guilty of that myself, of not putting in the effort and work, which I've told myself I'm going to do this year, to really get on the ball of promoting it. But it's like anything, it really comes from hard work and dedication and being persistent.
Okay. Now, how long has your book been out?
I published it the December before last, I believe. So,
okay.
So about a year or so, something like that.
Okay. And now it is on Amazon.
It's on Amazon.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, does Amazon help you as far as in your promotion?
No, Amazon doesn't help you. I mean, it's print on demand, which makes it nice, and that's why I would recommend Create Space to people, because somebody's in Africa, India, New York City, LA, you're not shipping books to people. I mean, obviously people have their own methods, the way they want to go about something, but it's convenient. So if somebody, sees your book on social media, Facebook, they can order it and it's shipped directly to them. You're not, storehousing all these books in your garage or, spending thousands of dollars begging for money on the streets so you can buy more books that now you've got to distribute. You're not selling them out your trunk. Although if that's what you want to do, hey, do it. I'm not against it.
Okay. Now, but in the far as part of, what are some of the things that you're doing to promote your
well, I've done, just like I'm doing now, social media, going to speak in different prisons, speaking engagements, different TV, radio shows and stuff like that. But like I said, I'm guilty. I've not done near enough as to what I do. But you have to treat it, like I tell people who want to write, you have to treat it like a job. It's like anything that you want to do, whether it's a business, whether it's a ministry, whether, it's some goal that you have to treat it like a job. You have to set time apart. And I think that's probably one of people's biggest hangups is they treat it more like a hobby And so, if you have a goal in life and you decide, oh, I'm just gonna, practice or, tend to it when I feel like it, you might get there somewhere before you die, but at that point you'll be too old to enjoy it. So, you really have to set time
That's
apart, and just like you would at a job, you wouldn't be able to go hang out with your friend, at the mall or the coffee shop or whatever. You have to say, put a schedule aside, whether it's all day on Saturday, or it's an hour every evening, or it's 2 hours at night, or an hour in the morning. You've got to set aside time to do that.
Mm-hmm. Now, in order to write your book, you have to set aside quite a bit of time, first, in order to get it done.
Yeah.
Okay. What are some of the things that? Why did you choose, far as to write your book?
I just felt like it was a story that had to be told. I'm just creative in nature, and writing has always been therapeutic to me. I tell people all the time, even if it's not something you want to do as far as career, but just have a journal. That I tell the guys all the time in the prison. I said writing is very therapeutic because you get what's in here out here. And so, and also people just kept telling me, they said, oh my gosh, you need to write a book. And people would say, this sounds like one of those Lifetime stories. And so I was like, yeah, it does. And so I just felt like we don't go through things just for us. So when you go through something that's life-changing, you're obligated to share that experience with other people, because there's other people who have gone through similar experiences. And not only that, but I find that it's healing for you. That it's reciprocal. When you give to other people, you do get something back. I've taken trips to Haiti, and what I tell people is I probably got more out of that trip than what I gave, because it's the experience. And that, it was back in college when I went, so it's been some years ago. But even to this day, when I'm having a little self-pity party or something like that, that experience, I can look at it and say, wow, I have something to be grateful for. I can open my refrigerator and there's food. I can drink clean water. Whereas down there, people are literally sweeping dirt floors, and there's no refrigeration. So the meat has flies and those kind of things. So, it's about the experience and learning from that and sharing with other people.
Okay. Now, with your ministry, your prison ministry also, it's kind of like that coincides, or that's kind of like a byproduct of your book, of your...
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. So really the concept of running with tears, turn your pain into passion, is that, oftentimes in life we look at people who we see as successful. And so we just assume it was easy. Like you hear the saying, the overnight success, and they're like, yeah, but it only took me 10 years, kind of thing. So we see the success, but we don't see the failures. And so I want to hear about people's failures. Your success is great. We can all applaud that. But I want to know, how many times did you fall? Because the majority of the process, when you climb a mountain, it's climbing. It's climbing. It's hard work. It's late nights. It's pain. And so, like, I brought along this thing that I was putting together today, but it's called the 7 Ps. And the 7 Ps of success is purpose, passion, persistence, pain, perspective, payoff, and pride. And I can go through those in a second. But, it's really about learning that there's hard work and there's dedication in it, but you have to also learn the process as well. You have to learn to enjoy the process of climbing that mountain and that hill.
Okay. Have you gotten any feedback as far as from your book?
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of great feedback. Just a lot of the guys, I take my book, I go into the prisons, I speak at men's prisons throughout the state. But I have time and time again, and it's funny because I remember when I first went into prison thinking, why am I going in here? And I'll tell you that story later, but I remember thinking, I don't have anything in common with these men, and why would I go into prison to speak? But what I find is that pain doesn't discriminate. So it doesn't discriminate between rich and poor. It doesn't discriminate between, black, white, Hispanic. It doesn't discriminate between, what language you speak or what zip code you live in. Pain visits us all. And so pain is something that people really want to know. This is what I find when I go into prison. You see these guys, they're all tatted up, they got the grills on, and some people think they look all scary, but I'm like, when you really sit down with them, they have a lot of pain. and they're really just looking for somebody to say, I understand your pain, and to hear their story. And that's, I think, really what we're all looking for. We're looking for somebody, just hear me, just listen to me. And so often things happen to us and we just tell people, oh, get over it. But the fact of the matter is we don't get over it. We all know people that you meet 40 years later and they're still talking about this experience like it was yesterday. And you're like, get over it. But until we visit that thing, it's just like if you had cancer, you wouldn't say just get over it. You have to get treatment. You have to get to the root of that. And what I find in our culture, we don't want to get to the root of it because it's messy and it's dirty. And we are an instant culture. Everything's instant. We
instant gratification.
Email, we Skype, FaceTime, all this. It's this instant gratification. So what we want to do is, take a pill for that.
Right.
And I was just talking to somebody, today about that, about how, this woman, she was depressed and they were saying, take medication. Well, the fact of the matter, her husband traveled a lot. He was gone all the time. And she told her friend, she said, well, pills don't cure loneliness. Pills don't cure abuse as a child. So, and I see it at the prison where, a lot of these guys, they're on all this medication and they're doped up and they call it the pill mill. And so my thing is, we can, and I think what we do is we throw pills at it because it gives us this sense of, I helped you. I gave you a pill. It eases our conscience to feel like we were doing something to help somebody in a situation. But the reason we don't want to really dig in, like I said, because fixing people, it takes time. And that's what we're going to have to do if we want to fix people is we have to, get to the root of these things. We have to get our hands dirty. You have to be willing to be in it for the long haul. And so that's what I try to do to let these men know that, I'm not somebody that's coming here and that's leaving. God has given me a vision, and it was to raise up leaders from unlikely places. God always uses unlikely people.
Oh, okay. Now, let me ask you, because you do your ministry, your prison ministry, do you do any other speaking engagements or?
Yeah, I mean, I've done lobbying for legislation, so, spoke at the State House for Senate, so I'm always open to speaking engagements because I love to talk. So, no, but it's my natural inclination. I tell people I'm happiest when I'm helping people. Okay. So my thing is, I heard T.D. Jakes say something the other day. He said, if you make enough stupid decisions, you should eventually become wise. So I find that, from my experiences and things that I've done with the mistakes that I've made, that hopefully I can help somebody else not go down that same path, or somebody that's already in it, the lessons that I've learned, because I'm a very analytical person. So I'm constantly doing self-reflection. Even when people do something to me, I still feel that often we play a part in that. So the question you have to ask, maybe you were in a marriage or you in a relationship or a business partner and the person betrayed you, deceived you, or whatever. We have to, ask ourselves those questions, because I feel there's always red flags. There's always signs along the way that we tend to ignore. So again, instead of playing that victim role and empowering the person or the problem, take ownership of that and say, okay, why did I ignore these signs? Or what was it in me that would allow this person into my personal space? So we have to constantly self-reflect. So I'm constantly doing that. So I just like to share those experiences with other people so that hopefully they can learn that you can take a bad situation and find something good out of it.
That's very inspirational right there. With your book, are you working on a second book?
I do have a title for a next book. I haven't started writing it, but I know what it's going to be about. And I believe it's going to be called When It Hurts to Hope. Okay. So it's about, oftentimes people, the reason why they don't try is because they have failed, they have had disappointments, and it hurts to hope. It hurts to have hope. It hurts to have an expectation, because when you have an expectation or when you try, there's always the possibility that you'll fail. And so what I find is oftentimes there's these, valley of dry bones, as you would say, of people who, there's a chapter in my book, and it's called Don't Die Between Pain and Purpose. And people have asked me, what's your favorite chapter? That's probably my favorite chapter. Because what I find is that oftentimes people die. They die between pain and purpose. Everybody loves to start something, and we all love to finish. But what happens in the in-between? And I heard T.D. Jakes. I listen to him all the time. So, but he's one of my favorite people I listen to. So I'll be quoting him probably a lot.
Okay.
But he was saying that, people say they love happy endings. And he said, but what makes a happy ending is the hateful middle. There's always a hateful middle. And he said, that's the part that makes a happy ending. There's the conflict. And so what I try to teach people is, change your perspective on how you see the conflict. Your perspective is everything. And, what is the difference between success and failure? It's perspective.
Wow. Again, if you're listening to this podcast, then you can, I don't know if you can tell, that she has a lot of energy. You have a lot of passion about what helping people, which is great. Zig Ziglar had this saying that if you help enough people get what they want, then that fulfills you right there. So when you were talking about purpose, right here, you have me sold. You have a definite purpose right there. Have you had anyone contact you and say, okay, I read a passage from your book and how it changed their life, or that it touched a nerve, or it was reflective of a situation that they may have?
Yes. So like I said, I probably got distracted because I get off on all kinds of little rabbit trails. So, but I was saying about the guys in the prison and some of the letters, and when I'm in prison, they'll come up to me, hey, I read your book, man. I read it in like 2 days, and I stayed up all night reading it. But I had a guy. This was probably the most impactful letter I received. It was a guy who had read my book, and he was in prison. He's serving like a 40-year sentence, about 40 years. So, pretty much. It looks like he's not going to get out, except for if God, doesn't get him out. But he had a life sentence, pretty much 40 years, and his brother had got murdered some years ago. And it just so happened the guy who murdered his brother ended up in the same prison as him. And he found out this was the guy who murdered his brother. So he said, I was planning on taking this guy out. He said, I had it all planned. The only question was it going to be dirty or clean, messy or clean? And he said, I started befriending him, telling him, hey, you should try to get over on our block. We'll look out for you. He says, so I had everything in place. I got him over to my block. He says, and then I got a copy of your book. And so essentially my book is about, there was this great betrayal by my husband. He ended up conspiring to have me put in a psych ward. And in the psych ward, they threatened me with electric shock. Ended up getting out. There was a whole series of things that happened through, manipulation that he did. But I would later find out that he was having an affair with the health official who put me in there into the psych ward. And then when I got out, he ended up getting a restraining order on me, took my children away. It was very, very painful experience. So, there was a lot of anger and rage and hatred that I had, but God ended up dealing with me to forgive him and forgive all the other people that had betrayed me in this experience. And so my book is really about, not only turning your pain into passion and purpose, but it's about forgiveness and it's about redemption, that, God redeems people. He redeems those of us who have been hurt, and he redeems those who are doing the hurting, because that's who he is. But he read my book, and he said, Julie, that book really convicted me. He said, I realized that God does have a purpose and a plan for my life, and this was really just Satan trying to get me to destroy my life. And he said, I got convicted that I needed to forgive this guy. He said, so I ended up not only forgiving the guy, he said, but God touched my heart so much because the guy's very intelligent guy. You'd be amazed at, the talent that's in prison. But he ended up, he said, he was a tutor in the prison. He said, God ended up touching my heart to end up mentoring this guy, kind of take him under my wing as like a little brother. So that was probably, it made me realize that this was more than just a book. It was for some people a saving grace. Like, people need to hear this message. And that's why I say everybody, like you said, when we came in here today, everybody has a story. Tell your story. It'll help somebody.
Yeah, that's one of the things, and as we were discussing earlier, that a lot of times you don't hear those stories, or when someone hears a story that's mirroring pretty much your own situation right there. Sometimes people hold it back, saying that, for instance, everything that you went through, I'm not going to put it in paper. I'm not going to document it. I'm going to hold that to myself right there. Where by doing that, it kind of hurts someone that could benefit from it.
Right, exactly.
There.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, also, it's kind of therapeutic when you're able, far as to, hey, let me put it out there so I can see it, even though it's painful. It is what it is, and by doing that, I can move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I find. I find every time I go into the prison, I go in there, I'm in there twice a week. I go in every Thursday, I teach a class on leadership, and I go in on Sundays. We have a running group down there. But just the comments and the feedback, and I don't know how many times, because anytime you start something, it's not going to be easy. If you start a business or, start writing a book, or you want to do a film, or whatever you're doing, there's all kinds of bumps and opposition. You're going to feel like quitting. And there was times I would feel like quitting, and then I would get a letter, just like that from a guy saying, man, you changed my life. I had gotten a letter from one guy. He was this amazingly gifted spoken word artist. I mean, he literally, his mind just never stopped. And so he would come into class, and he, would share some of these poems. And so I started encouraging him to go up in front of the classroom and perform them, and, would just try to boost his confidence and telling him, what a talent he had, and encouraging him to, voice projection, all these things. Well, he ended up getting transferred to another prison, and he wrote me, and he was only in my class for like 6 months. And he said, he said, I never told you this, but I wanted to thank you. He said, you've been my greatest encouragement. He said, in the time I was in your class, he said, I wrote 600 poems. 600 poems. This guy was just, literally, he would just write. But he said, I got 100 of them copyrighted. And he wrote me the other day, and he said they have filmed it. They did a production up at his prison, like spoken word rap. And he's like, I performed my poems. He's like, and they filmed it. And he's like, I wanted to send it to, he's like, I was going to send it to my mom, but he's like, I want to send it to you instead. He's like, can I send it to you? And I was like, absolutely. But it's teaching people, because it's an outlet. Creativity is an outlet. The arts,
therapy.
yeah. If you look at some of your favorite songs, Eminem, some of his songs came from pain. A lot of the rappers, it came from pain. Look at Kesha's "Praying." If you're familiar with her song, for those who are not, she was raped, and so it was about, her story is about this rape that occurred. And she was on a talk show, and they had asked her about the song, and she kind of started tearing up. But she said, this album literally saved my life. And that's what I find, that for, to get your story out there, there's something healing about it. So when I hear this feedback from the guys, it's healing to me. And it's like pieces of me come back. So we lose things, pieces of ourselves in life. And we need to learn, how do I get back my identity? How do I find myself? How do I find my purpose? And what I find is you find your purpose in helping people. Like, it's all about people. If we don't make it about people, what are we doing here?
The surprises that you found. Once you turned this into, okay, I'm going into this wholehearted.
One of the things I didn't anticipate.
Yes.
I wouldn't say there wasn't, I can't say there was something I didn't anticipate. I think really, the thing that I've learned is that you have to be consistent. So that's one of my 7 P's is persistence, is that, I used to teach aerobics, and you would see people, New Year's, everyone's in their New Year's resolutions, and you'd see these people and they're out of shape, and they're working out like 2-3 hours a day. And you're like, that seems a bit much, a bit extreme. And then after 2 weeks, they quit because they don't have consistency. They're not persistent. And so what I found is that you have to be persistent. So every day, weekly, you've got to stay on a schedule to, like I said, promote and market your book, because you can write it, but it's not going to sell itself. If you get that lucky break, you get on Oprah's book club, hey, that's awesome. But again, I'm sure before they got to Oprah, they were making hundreds and thousands of calls and emails, and 95% of those weren't returning their calls or inviting them to be on their show. But it was, you never know where you might get your breakthrough. Somebody listening, it may not be a huge listenership, huge audience, but somebody's listening, and then that person gets you here and there. It's kind of like dominoes, like connect the dots. So.
Okay. What opportunities for growth do you see going
Where
forward?
do I see myself? Well, I'm doing a revision. I've written a script based off of my book, so I'm working on connecting with somebody to get that directed and produced. So I'm hoping to turn that into a film, and so my goal is to be able to be self-sustaining. So hopefully through the doors that will open there through film production, and like I said, if I can discipline myself to market the way I need to with my book, but getting just platforms to work in media and communications. I'm naturally just a communicator, so I like to communicate. I like to talk. I like to connect with people, but using that as a platform to get more speaking engagements, to bring awareness to what my passion really is about, redeeming men and fathers, because like I said, everything's about people. And like I tell people all the time, I said, sometimes we're chasing after these elusive things. It's almost like a mirage. You're chasing after success, you're chasing after money. But what I tell people, and hopefully this gives them kind of a visual, I said, imagine you've been training your entire life for a race. I said, and you finally get to the Olympics. I said, and the gun goes off, you take off out the blocks. I said, and you run the race of your life. You not only beat your personal record, but you make the world record. You've won the gold medal. I said, and you look up in the stands and it's empty, nobody's there. Does that have any meaning? No. If you become rich and you obtain all this, success, and you're living in a 20,000 square foot mansion and there's nobody there, there's nobody to share these successes with, it doesn't mean anything. There's a book, Damon John from the Shark Tank was promoting it on LinkedIn, but I believe it's called The Mask of Masculinity. Have you heard of it? I don't even know who he is. He was a pro ball player. I want to say his last name is Lowe's. But anyway, it looked really good. But he was sharing his story, and he was saying how there's this mask of masculinity that men hide behind. And he was saying at 5 years old, he was raped by a man. And he said it affected his whole life. And so out of that, he never told anybody. So he was always trying to prove himself. And he said he tried to do it through sports, becoming, successful. He said, and then he had an injury where he couldn't play anymore. And now it was like, oh, where's my identity at? Then he tried to do it in business. He said, but it was always empty. And so that's what I find is that we have a society of empty people because we're not building relationships. We're not building intimacy. We were designed for intimacy. And so that's what I tell people. It starts with your purpose. What is your purpose? What is your why? Why am I doing this? In some form or fashion, it should be to help people. Whether you're creating an invention, it's to help people. You wrote a book, it's to help people. You open a Chick-fil-A, it's to help people. It's a service industry. My kids love Chick-fil-A. So, but and even in that, you don't have to be a speaker, you don't have to be a preacher, you don't have to be that. But what do you are you bringing joy to somebody? Are you bringing happiness to somebody? How do you treat the people that somebody's coming in and they're ordering a little Chick-fil-A meal? You really don't know what just happened to this person a week ago. Their husband could have walked out. They could have lost a child. Just that little bit of kindness and smile to that person. So everything you do, your purpose, your why, that's what's going to keep you going. But in some form or fashion, it has to be around people. Because outside of people, really, what are we doing here? Right. What are we doing here?
Right.
So
that reminds me of a quote, and that was that everyone you meet is facing or fighting some battle.
Exactly.
And you never know what battle that they're fighting.
Yeah. My bishop always says you're either in a storm, coming out of a storm, or you're going into a storm. So, and that's another one of my P's. I was like, it's perspective. It's really, how do you view this? You hear the cliche, is the glass half full or half empty? But it's really, really true. And something I've really been trying to focus on is that very essence, perspective, and being in the present. I remember years ago I had went with somebody to an AA meeting. No, I wasn't an alcoholic. I don't remember why I was there, but they invited me. And so one of the things a guy said that stuck out, he said, I had 1 foot in the past, 1 foot in the future, and I was pissing on the present. And how many of us do that? We're not present. Look at all the people on their smartphones. I'll go out and there's a dinner table and everybody, there'll be 5 or 6 people, and they're all on their smartphones. I was running down by the river the other day, and there was a man and a little child. He was with his child, and he's on his smartphone. And I'm thinking, wow, it's a beautiful day out. You're down by the river. You could be playing, laughing, joking. But we do that, whether it's distractions, whether it's we're there, but we're not mentally. And I'm guilty of doing that. I'm thinking about all the things I have to do, or maybe a situation that has occurred that I'm frustrated or upset about, and I'm not in the present. And so I'm like, how many of us are missing this moment, this present? Like they call the past, and the future, but today is called the present because it's a gift.
Yes.
You don't get a redo from yesterday, and tomorrow's not guaranteed. What are you doing with the present? So while you're climbing the mountain to get to your purpose, and it's great to aspire to something higher and try to obtain something, but what I find that the catch is, are you enjoying the journey? Because the majority of the mountain is spent climbing. You get up there, it's a beautiful view, this is awesome, but those peaks are few and far between. So if you don't learn how to enjoy the process, you're going to get there to where you think success is, and it's not going to look like what you think, because there's another problem, like we said. And so if you don't have the right perspective, I can have joy, I can have peace in the midst of the problem, it's what my perspective is about it. Like my daughter, she's 14, and she had to do this speak in front of class. And she's like, I don't want to do this. And I was like, what's the worst thing that could happen? I was like, everybody will laugh at you and think you were terrible. Like, that's the worst that can happen. Like, I heard something the other day. They said, it was like a little thing. It was failure talking. And it said, what if I fail? And then life said, we'll all laugh at you. Like you think about, like, imagine the worst case scenario and then go, oh, like, will you die?
Oh.
No, life will go on. So face your fears and go, okay, it's really not that bad. Like, it's not that serious. Mm-hmm. So.
It's great talking.
Oh, thanks.
With you. Listening to you. That's very inspiring. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're here for, is to help those who are out there, inspire those. Again, the program is about entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. But again, with your particular industry, as far as an author, that there's so many different areas that you are touching on right there. I wouldn't be surprised if we listened to a radio station or a podcast, and you had your own podcast.
My own show, right?
Your own show.
Well, that's the goal.
Okay. Well, again, I know you have a pretty busy day, and we won't take any more of your time. But we always like to ask, and that is, what would you like the community to know?
What would I like them to know? The main thing I want them to know is that, real quick, if I can run down these, purpose. This is yours. Why. So why are you doing this? This is your mission statement. This is what's going to keep you going when you want to quit. The second thing is passion. So would you do it for free? If you wouldn't do it for free, then it's probably something you shouldn't be doing, because if you're starting a business, or if you're starting a ministry, anything that is jumping out of the pack of average and normal, you're going to feel like quitting. And so the passion is what's going to keep you going. And the majority of people, when they start something, they're doing it for free. They're not getting paid. A lot of entrepreneurs, they're working for free. So you have to be passionate about what you're doing. Persistence. I talked about this. I said quitting cannot be an option. There was a quote by Winston Churchill. It's one of my favorites. It says, never give in. Never, 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 never. And so sometimes it literally is about outlasting. So, you have an enemy working against you. Is can you outlast the enemy? Can you outlast the opposition? Can you outlast the problems that are going to come against you? Pain. The fourth P, it's inevitable. So the pains of disappointments, closed doors, rejection, jealousy from people who you thought would support you, oftentimes will be the ones that are your greatest opposition. So that creates pain. You have to learn how to overcome that. I was listening to something. They said the difference between a good athlete and an elite athlete is their ability to endure pain. And so you have to be able to endure pain. And so the fifth one is perspective. What separates success from failure? Perspective. You cannot be afraid to fail. You can't look at failure as an end all. There's a quote by Michael Jordan. It's one of my favorites. He says, I've missed 9,000 shots, lost almost 300 games. 26 times been awarded with the winning game shot. Yes. And he says, I've missed. He said, I failed over and over again, and this is why I succeed. I just read something today about Bill Gates. He was a Harvard dropout. and was a co-owner of a failed business. He could have looked at that and said, you know what, I guess I'm not meant to go into business. Michael Jordan could have said, oh, I was cut from the high school team, I guess I'm not supposed to. But it was his perspective about it. And so what I find is that failure is really, it's a building block. It's a building block to strength, and it's a building block to have compassion for other people. When you go through certain things, it gives you another perspective to be able to relate. It gives you a greater sphere of influence. And if you keep your perspective right, like I tell people, I said, you want to be a leader. I said, what is a leader? A leader is a problem solver. I said, so what are you going to have more of? Problems. I said, if you want to lead a few people, you have a few problems. If you want to lead a lot of people, I said, you're going to have a lot of problems. So it's how you choose to look at it. Problems are often opportunities for success. So if you could solve a problem, guess what? Who are they going to? The problem solver. So, and then the last two things are payoff and pride. And so you have to realize that there is a reward for your faithfulness. So if you put in the hard work and the dedication, there's going to be a payoff. So when things are difficult, you have to keep your mind on that finish line, that there's a payoff coming for this. And that's why a lot of people never get the payoff, is because they can't endure the pain and the process. And then the last P is pride. So we all know before a great fall comes pride. So when you get to the payoff, when you get to the place of purpose, and you're like, oh man, I finally made it, don't forget where you came from. Remain humble. Remain in a place of humility. Be pliable to be used. Don't think you know it all. You can always learn from other people. Even though you're up here, you can learn from the people down here. And remember, like I said, it's all about people. So when you get there, don't get so prideful that, oh, it's about me. No, it always was about the people. And that's why when you start with the purpose, it has to begin with people. It begins with people and it ends with people. So that would be my advice for the 7 Ps.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's been an honor. And as always, we appreciate hearing your story.